everybody, this is Hammer Striker here. Today we've got an IWI Tavor TS12. It's a 12 gauge semi-automatic shotgun. They announced it over a year ago, so it's been quite a while trying to get this out, but they finally got it out. This is actually the retail version. This is the version that you could buy if you were able to find one. So it's not a pre-production sample or anything like that. And we'll start out by showing that it's unloaded. Basically what this is it's a tube magazine fed 12 gauge semi-automatic shotgun, and the tube magazines are here, and there's 3 of them, and they rotate kind of like a revolver. And the advantage of that is that you can hold 5 2 3/4 shells or 4 3-inch shells in each tube in any combination of slug, shot, whatever it is you want. And then you just rotate the cylinders when one of the tube is drained. It'll automatically chamber another round once you present it with a loaded cylinder, or magazine actually, and it will start going again. So you can almost continuously get 15 rounds downrange plus 1 if you put one in the pipe before you start, with just a momentary delay while you rotate it. So I'm going to show you a few of the controls, which, being a shotgun, there are more controls than you might find on a typical rifle or anything like that. So the first control I'll mention is this button here. And this releases the magazine tubes. It allows you to rotate them, and then they lock in place. So every time you want to rotate it, you hit the button and rotate. It doesn't matter whether or not you've drained a tube. You can rotate it while it's fully loaded. So that if you, for example, if you were wanting to alternate between shot and slugs, and you had one tube of shot and one tube of slugs, you could, if you wanted to, cycle back and forth, keeping in mind that it's going to fire whatever it last chambered. So every time you fire it, like any other semi-automatic, if there's a round available in the tube that's lined up, it'll chamber that round, whatever it happens to be. But there is a lot of flexibility in how you work this thing going back and forth. It has a crossbolt safety right here, so I just put it into the safe position, and if I push the safety again, it's now in the fire position, and that's very common with shotguns. It has a couple other controls. It has a release here to release a round, and when you release a round from the magazine, it will hit the stop and stay there, so that you won't have rounds when you push the button flying everywhere. Now, it is possible, if you get your fingers in the way, to trip it up where the round can't hit this, and then they'll fly out. But if you just hit the button and let a round drop into that position, you'll see that the stop kind of comes up a little bit. It'll catch the round, you can pull it out. So unloading this is relatively easy. You don't have to cycle them through the action. You can just keep hitting the button, taking the shell off, and unload it. And you can do that on either side. You can also load it from either side. You'll see the magazine follower on this side, which is right here. Get my finger up there. Right there. There's the magazine follower. Same on this side. So I can load either side, whichever I want. This can be made ambidextrous, but only half of it can be done yourself. If you want to reverse the ejection, at the moment you need to send it back to IWI for them to do that. In the future they may have a field kit that you can put in, but it does involve changing the bolt and moving the plate on from one side to other. So unlike the other Tavors, which are either ready to go right from the factory or where you can buy the bolt and do it at home, currently the process is you send it to them. The charging handle can be pulled out relatively easily and put on the other side. So all I'd have to do if I wanted to reverse the charging handle is insert it on the other side. Just drop it right in, push it down into place, and it's done. While I've got the charging handle out, let's talk about the gas system on this. You'll see that there is a L and an H, and the line is on the L. That's low power gas, or I'm sorry, that is higher power gas for lower power shells, so 2 3/4 and other lower power shells. The H position would be lower power gas for higher power shells. It's kind of bass-backwards when you try to say it that way, but basically, are you going to run low power loads or high power loads is another way to look at it. So this can run 3-inch magnums, it can run slugs, and it can also run 2 3/4. To change the gas system, you actually have the tool right here. You just pull the charging handle out, put it into that notch, and swap it. And you can do that from either side. So that if I were to turn the gun over, you'll see that it's in high on the other side as well, so the notches stay consistent. The letters are upside down on one side versus the other because as you rotate it back and forth, but it's clearly labeled whichever side you're on. And then when you're done with it, you put the charging handle back and you're ready to go. The charging handle does not reciprocate, so you don't have to worry about getting smacked by it, and you can easily smoothly operate it so that whichever side you want it on makes it easy to work it. A few of the other features, while I've got it in this position, it has a M-lock forend, so you can put M-lock accessories, Picatinny rails, lights, whatever it is that's an M-lock on the front end. And right by my hand, it's got a Picatinny rail that's aluminum that goes the entire length of it. You'll notice I've got these flip-up sights. These do not come with it. I bought these on Amazon, something I could have here the same day. They're just push-button flip-ups. But it comes with the bare rail. So if you want sights, you'll have to put something on it, whether you're going to put an optic on it, a red dot, if you're going to use it for hunting, potentially a scope. But you'll plan to have some sort of sighting mechanism unless you just want to sight down the rail. And, shotguns, or people always talk about shotguns, mean you don't have to aim them. They do hold a tight pattern. This holds a fairly nice tight pattern. You do have to reasonably aim it at what it is you're trying to hit, especially if you're going to use it for hunting. You're going to go a little bit longer range. It also has QD swivel mounts here and at the back on both sides. So if I flip it back over, you'll see they're also on the other side as well. So it's set up for a sling or however it is you want to carry it. Two other controls while I've got it flipped back to this side. This is the lifter release, so this will enable it to chamber around. If you've got the bolt locked back, it will be ready to chamber around. If you've got the bolt closed when you're loading it, and there's a reason you might want to do that, if the bolt is open and you rotate a loaded magazine in front of it, into the emptying position, it will pick up around from it and chamber. If you have the bolt closed, it will not. And you may want to do that so that as you're trying to load the thing, you don't suddenly end up with a hot chamber. So it'll be up to what you're wanting to do. I tend to want to close the bolt. I don't want it to chamber till I'm ready to chamber it. At that point, if you've left the bolt closed and you've loaded it up and rotated a loaded magazine tube in front of it, to get it to pick up around, you have to release the lifter. And this is kind of behavior similar to many other semi-automatic shotguns where you have to take certain actions to get the automatic loading process to work. Once you've done that once and it's loaded the first round, it will then continue to load itself throughout the rest of running it. And this button is the bolt release. If you push this, it'll close the bolt. So there are a few controls, but not an excessive number of them. From a dimension standpoint, this has got an 18.5-inch barrel in a relatively small package. The bullpup configuration is what enables that. It is 28.75 inches long, so it is not an NFA weapon. It's a regular full-size, just a shotgun. It is 10.23 inches tall from the base of this to the top of the rail, this is the largest part of the gun, and it weighs about 8 pounds. So it's a little bit on the little heavy side compared to like just a classic shotgun. But for something like this in this configuration, it's actually a pretty reasonable weight. When you've got it up to your shoulder, it doesn't feel heavy. Of course, the weight shifts to the back, and it balances quite well. At the back, it's relatively thin, but then, of course, you've got this middle part with the magazines that kind of puffs it out. So dimensionally, it kind of varies which end of it it's on. If you're looking at the widest part, it's actually relatively thick right here. It holds, as I mentioned, it'll hold a total of 15 rounds in the magazine tubes if you're using 2 3/4, and it does have a 3-inch chamber. So you've got a lot of firepower in a very small compact package. Recoil on it is very manageable. It is a 12 gauge. You do know you've pulled the trigger on it. It's not not like you're shooting a 22, but it's actually far smoother recoil than most pump guns that you're used to. There's a few different bullpup shotguns out there, but the majority of them, like the Kel-Tec, are pump guns. I believe the SRM 1216 is also a semi-automatic tube fed like this. It's about $800 more. Its MSRP is around $2,200, where this one is $1,399. But you can get them right now. They're new, so it's kind of hard to get them at a discount, but I've seen them around So at that point, the SRM 1216's been out for a while and it's still trying to kind of command its price. It holds 16 rounds instead of 15 that this holds, but other than that, there's not a lot in this territory as far as semi-automatic bullpup shotguns like this. So you'd be spending about $800 more to get one more round capacity. Overall, at the range, this proved to be reliable, but it is a little ammo sensitive. And you're going to kind of find that with semi-automatic shotguns. You're going to find what they do and don't like. What we ran into is we first started out with Royal Rio, which is what the local range had in stock. And we've used this in other guns, and it's decent quality ammo. But it didn't want to feed. They kind of hung up feeding. We tried a few different times, and they just didn't work reliably. We had also brought with us some Federal that was a kind of a high-power Federal load, and we bought this Federal Law Enforcement Tactical, which is actually a low-power load. This is only around 1135 feet per second. It wouldn't feed the Royal Rio, but it ran this Federal and the other Federal flawlessly. And one thing I'm going to note, these are both 2 3/4. And I got a better picture I'll put up, but if you put them next to each other, you'll see that the Royal Rio is much longer. It's not quite 3-inch, it's not quite 2 3/4 inch, and the other thing that you'll see is look at the nose of the Federal. It's kind of rounded, so it's got a slope. The nose of this one is really square. And what I think it was doing is hanging up on the top of the chamber as it was going in. So I think you're going to find with this, like many other semi-autos, there's certain ammo they're going to like and certain ammo they don't. When we fed this both high power and low power Federal ammo, it just ran flawlessly. The other thing we found with the Royal Rio is because it's longer than a standard 2 3/4, but not full 3-inch, we couldn't get more than 4 of them in the tube. So when you get this, number one, don't try to run Royal Rio. At least if yours is anything like this one, it won't run. But beyond that, experiment with a couple different ammos. Find out what it does like and what it will run reliably. We ran all buckshot. We are going to get a new choke tube for this. And once we've got a new choke tube for this, we're going to run some slugs through it. And we're also going to do a follow-up. We'll take it to the outdoor range and run various birdshot through it. I think once it's been through an initial break-in period, you should have no trouble running anything that isn't kind of out of spec. And one of the things you're going to find when you say out of spec, specs for shotgun ammo is kind of loose. The various ammo will have different dimensions, different edges, different shapes. Unlike pistol and rifle ammo, which is usually accurate down to the hundredths of a thousandth of an inch, there is some variation in shotgun ammo. Beyond that, I think that there's not going to be any problem running the various different ammos you might want to run through this. To disassemble this is a combination of toolless, and then there is a point where you do need one tool, a punch, a 3mm punch. You could also use a clock tool. And as a general rule, I don't like it when you need to use a tool to disassemble something, but I haven't run across a shotgun yet that you could fully take apart for cleaning that didn't require at least a punch. As long as you don't require socket sets and mechanics tools to do it, and pliers, I'm kind of okay with shotguns using a punch to disassemble them. So let's look at the trigger. The last thing we'll look at is the trigger. And of course we just put it together, and so we know this thing is unloaded, but you would check that first. And let me cycle it to make sure that the trigger is cocked. It is a bullpup. Bullpups are not known for having the greatest triggers on the planet. I made sure it was on fire. I'm going to do it this way. There's a little bit of take up, a little bit of creep, not a huge amount, and then it breaks. And it feels a little heavier when I'm playing with it at the table here, but when I got it out at the range, I didn't notice the trigger. It just worked. It was short enough to be crisp enough to get the job done. It isn't a flawless trigger like you might get in a Benelli or another shotgun that's actually really designed for competition. This is going to be more along the lines of a combat trigger. Not quite as heavy as the original Tavor, not as nice as the Tavor 7, kind of fits right in there in between. Right now I've got an improved cylinder choke in it. It comes with an improved cylinder choke and it comes with a modified choke. It comes with the modified installed. I swapped them out to the improved cylinder. and I'm going to be ordering a cylinder choke for it so I can run slugs through it. And yes, I know you can run slugs through an improved cylinder, but I prefer to do through cylinder. That way I can run sabots, I can run rifled slugs, I can run whatever I want. And it uses the Benelli Mobile or the Beretta style choke pattern. You'd want to use the flush tubes. So I'll show you one of these. It's a flush tube. You don't want the extended ones for this. And they're readily available, around $20 a piece, so the choke tubes are easy to get a hold of. And then being the Benelli Beretta pattern, it's a very common pattern, so it's not some obscure thing that you can only get from Israel. You can get them from pretty much anywhere. So overall, it's actually a very interesting gun that in a very small, relatively light package gives you a significant amount of capacity, a total of 16 rounds if you're using 2 3/4 and you throw one into the chamber before you start. Where normally to get this type of capacity you would either have a very long gun with an extension, a magazine tube extension, or you'd be going magazine fed, and at that point now you're kind of dealing with the magazines and what ends up usually being a slightly bulkier platform. So at the MSRP of $1,400, it's actually a lot of gun for that money and a lot of capacity and a lot of flexibility. So if you're watching this, shortly after release, hope you had a good Thanksgiving. Maybe you can score yourself a Black Friday special on one of these. If you're watching it, after that, still hope you had a good Thanksgiving when you had it. Beyond that, please check us out on Facebook, Patreon, Gunstreamer, Twitter, Instagram, kind of all over the place now. And if you enjoy our video, please give us a thumbs up, share, subscribe, click that bell to be notified if you do, and have a great day. Thank you. Ran flawlessly.